Hey everyone, this is David Camacho from the Opportunity Playbook. Today we have Leslie Gallagher as our guest. She is the owner of Two Hands and Four Paws, which is a physical therapy center in Los Angeles. I believe it was the largest one west of the Mississippi for a while, working on animal rehab. So we have an exciting story for you, not only what she does today, but presently how she came to this career. Leslie, it's fantastic to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
So we had an opportunity to meet, I believe it was last year, something that a lot of people don't know about me. I've worked in the veterinary field to help hire doctors and support staff, typically the people who run a business in support of what you do. And so I get to interact with a lot of interesting people. You happen to be one of them, and you have one of the most exciting career stories I have ever heard. In addition to that, life story in general of how you got to this career and as a business owner of, frankly, one of the most impressive facilities I've ever seen when it comes to animal rehab. So I would love for you to talk about your origin story and where you got started before you had this business.
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of a funny story. I worked for 10 years as my title was Director of International Affairs, which was hilarious because I truly did coordinate international affairs. But I worked as the right arm of one of the seven media moguls in the world. So he was, the Mexican Rupert Murdoch, because most people who are not from Central or South America don't know who he is. But I did this straight out of college, and I was 22 years old, and suddenly I was thrust into this universe where I had to um, not speak any English for 10 years because he said it would make me lazy if I spoke English. And that was a little bit daunting for the first couple of weeks, but it was fine. And I was having to manage a personal staff of about 400 people at 22
Wow.
in Spanish. And the company was bigger than ABC, CBS, and NBC combined. So we had about 40,000 employees. And I handled all of the United States and Europe. And there was a whole other team of people that handled Mexico and South America. Um, it was a really, really crazy, fun ride. I had to learn how to bulletproof cars. I had to learn how to shoot a gun. I traveled all over the world with this man. He had about 25 homes in Los Angeles, but we flew all over the world. He had six Gulfstream jets. He had the largest contemporary art collection in the world. So I did a lot of work with the Metropolitan Museum of Art and, blah, 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 the Louvre, sending art everywhere. But it was a great, great, fun career, and I loved it. And then he died. He got melanoma, and literally a mole on his shin killed him. So yeah, I wear a burqa 24/7. I'm so paranoid about the sun. But in one of his homes in Los Angeles, he left behind a German Shepherd. And we used to, when we would fly all over the world, we always had dogs on the plane, which was seriously the best part of my job because I'd always wanted to be a veterinarian. I failed every math class I ever took, so that was never going to be in the cards for me. But he had several German Shepherds, and when he died, his wife asked me if I would stay on and, sell the art and the crystal and the china and the wine and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't really know what I was going to do next. I had a lot of offers from Rupert Murdoch and all the other moguls to go work for them, but I didn't really want to do that. I loved my boss because he was just amazing, but I didn't really want to be somebody's secretary. But anyway, in one of those homes was a German Shepherd. And for months, I kept asking his wife, "What do you want me to do with this dog?" And finally, she said, "Oh, just put her down. Who's going to want her?" That's insane. I'm not going to kill this dog. I'd already lost my boss and I was already grieving so much. So I refused to kill her dog or his dog. And so she fired me for not killing the dog, which says a lot about her. But about 3 weeks later, I took her to a groomer to get a bath. And when I picked her up, she was paralyzed. And it was devastating. Now I'm unemployed and I have a paralyzed German Shepherd. And the people at the grooming salon actually said to me, "You must have done this when you dropped her off this morning." And I said, "The dog that brought in, walked in, and I was literally carrying her out." But at that time, 25 plus years ago, every single veterinary professional that I took her to said, "There's nothing we can do, just euthanize her." And that seemed so ridiculous to me because from the waist down, she was like a wet towel, but from the waist forward, she was fine. So I had a towel under her belly and I was just slinging her all over the place. I went to neurologists, acupuncturists, surgeons, homeopaths, raw diet practitioners. I went everywhere. And finally, my sister-in-law said, well, why don't you try swimming her? And I didn't have a pool, but I had a ton of friends with pools. So I asked a friend if I could borrow his pool. And I brought her over there every day. And probably within 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I had her walking again. And it was
Wow.
shocking to me that there was absolutely nobody in Los Angeles. We're a very affluent city with all the resources in the world, but there was absolutely nobody doing physical therapy on animals. And I had made a lot of money working for this guy, and I socked it all away. And I thought, I wonder if I could try to do this for other people. I always wanted to work with animals. And so I decided at 35 that I would go back to school and learn how to do animal physical therapy. Problem being, it didn't exist in California. So I essentially had to found the School of Animal Physical Therapy because there was nobody doing it. So I started volunteering in the hospital of a boarded surgeon to try to see what kind of cases I would be treating. I went to vet tech school at Pierce College to learn everything I could about anatomy and physiology and nutrition. I learned everything. And then I went to human massage school because I figured I needed to learn how to use my hands. And after a couple of years, canine massage school opened up in Colorado. So I flew to Colorado to do that. And then canine physical therapy school opened up in Florida. But I pioneered the field because I was it. There was nobody doing animal physical therapy. So yes, my facility is now the oldest and the largest in the state of California.
And all this was inspired by your love for your former boss's dog.
Well, I loved my boss, and the dog was such an extension of him. But yeah, it was. And the super funny aside to that is they had all this art, and she had an old master painting of Lita and the Swan, and I think it was from the 1600s. And when I was cleaning out the house, she told me to throw it away. And I was like, I can't throw away an old master. Good Lord. And so and I just brought it home and stuck it on the wall. I couldn't bear to throw away art. And after she fired me, I took it to Sotheby's and I auctioned it off for like $40,000. So that paid for her dog's physical therapy. I got, I got you.
I just had a conversation with a colleague of mine who was talking about this intangible that leaders look for that is really entrepreneurial, which is when there's a will, there's a way. I know you personally, obviously, but you sound like somebody who, when you look around, you're like, look, this doesn't exist. I'm going to make it happen. How much of that went into the success of your business now that it's been open for, a couple decades?
100%. Because, when you find a niche, you fill it, right? It was never something about trying to make money. It was trying to create something so that I could help other people avoid the experience that I went through. And I actually hear this probably once a week, if it weren't for you, I was going to have to euthanize my dog. And that just warms my heart. But I think the experience of working alongside one of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the world, it gives you the ability to learn. It's an experience. I went from kindergarten to a PhD with that guy. I learned so much about being an entrepreneur and not taking no for an answer. And it just didn't occur to me that this wouldn't be successful. And if it wasn't successful, I didn't care because I could always go back and work for another mogul. But I had a really strong feeling that this was going to be something that people would want. So,
I see that it's a common theme for what you just described. So there's two things that I hear in that. One is mentorship was essential for you to not only be successful as an individual, but it really fostered your business and your mindset that I might not have it figured out today, but it's going to happen. The decision is it's going to happen. There isn't a way that it doesn't. Where in your experience did you really see a transformation with your mentorship, working with your previous employer that stuck with you, that led you to be a successful entrepreneur, business owner that essentially was always making the decision that it was going to work, even though there would be challenges inevitably along the way?
I think a lot of that came from my mother because my mother always told me that I could do anything I wanted to do. But working for a man to whom nobody ever said no to, you didn't have a choice. It had to work. And I'll give you a silly example because this was way before the internet existed. But one day he called me up and he said, Leslie, and he was always very short with me. He didn't, there wasn't a lot of conversation. He said, Leslie, I need you to bulletproof the blue car and give it to the president. And he hung up the phone. And I'm like, what blue car? What president? The president of Disney? The president of Spain? The president of what? I mean, he had 250 cars. And I'm like, okay, so who am I going to call to try to figure out what car and what president? And I called his chauffeur and he said, I know what blue car it is. It's this one he's been talking about. And then I called his secretary in Mexico and I said, what president? And she said, oh, it's got to be for the president of Mexico. So I'm like, okay. So I got from two different sources what car and then figured out how to get it to the United States and get it bulletproofed. But I think the silly aside to that is you just figure it out. There is no, I can't do this. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And he knows that I'm going to figure it out. And, he wouldn't take no for an answer. Um, so I guess I've just gotten really good at thinking that this will work. And even if it doesn't, I felt like I didn't really need to make money. I really wanted to do this to help people. And if bonus I could actually survive doing it, then it was a win-win. But I never set out to do this thinking I was going to have a, big money making career.
So you talked about your core foundation for your determination coming from your mother and your boss who wouldn't take no for an answer. So you're really raised with the mindset, and I say raised even as a 22-year-old, that it is going to happen and I'm going to figure it out and solve the problem. I'm curious to know, as a person who leads business, manages others, and has been doing so for a long time, what would you say is what you find in common with people who think like that versus not?
Adversity. I belong to the Women Presidents Organization, which are all women who've scaled their businesses up to a certain level, and they're all pretty powerful women. And I think in all of us, something happened early on that we got through, and it made us feel like, and I don't want to say invincible because I'm certainly not invincible, but there's almost nothing I can't do if I really want to do it. And for me, I grew up in a really difficult household. My parents had a very, very unhappy marriage. And I got out of there as fast as I could as soon as I was 16. I sent myself off to boarding school to get away from them. But I think living through a lifetime of my father was probably bipolar, certainly highly depressed, brilliant, and incredibly successful. But I think you develop such a skill set when you grow up in a family that's very, very difficult. You can choose to either go, one way or the other. You can choose to become, a drug addict or an alcoholic, or, have a lifetime of really struggling, or you can take that adversity. And it makes me think of Lance Armstrong. He had a horrible childhood. He got testicular cancer, and then even though he was doping, he became an incredible athlete. I took all that fire that I had from my childhood of not wanting to be in such a difficult situation and turned it into, I can do anything I want to. I survived that. I can do anything.
It's really interesting that you say adversity. I was just talking to my colleague and we were looking at, what do you see when you hire somebody? What are the things that stand out for you that you look for that aren't on a piece of paper? And he didn't use the word grit or anything, but what he talked about was this adversity. So he actually specifically said, hey, look, you've been to prison and this is where you've made it so far. Let's talk about that. I'm less concerned about your Excel skills or your work experience. Let's talk about the mindset, the perseverance, your ability to survive and thrive that got you here today. I'm finding with other leaders really is at the core of what they might be looking for when they are trying to build people up in their organizations to help their business be successful. Because to your point, and I agree with this because it's been in my own life, that the mindset of I'm just going to make this happen. This is not the most difficult thing I've ever been through in my life, not since childhood, not since adolescence, not in adulthood. This is going to happen. And it's great to hear that this is sort of a constant I find with leaders who are really successful and who are self-made on top of that. And it sounds like you're also a mentor too with this foundation, which is something new I'm learning right now. How do you mentor other women in this organization or that you come into contact with and through your experiences as a business owner, but also as a woman who's been through all those things?
Oh my gosh, I'm so passionate about mentoring. I do a lot of mentoring. I go to, I lecture at a lot of places, a lot of schools, which I really enjoy. I feel so strongly about supporting other women and women supporting other women. Um, and just a quick aside, when competition finally came to town to Los Angeles and some other people showed up to do rehab, I was really excited about it because I thought, oh my gosh, I'll have colleagues, I'll have people I can
Yeah.
work with, I'll have people I can bounce ideas off of and pick up the phone and say, hey, I've got this German Shepherd with a gracilis contracture. What would you guys do? And when I first ran into them at a conference, they said right to my face, we're going to spend our entire career trying to shut you down. We're going to destroy you, because they didn't believe that I should be able to own a veterinary facility being a non-veterinarian. And I was quite successful from the get-go. And it was I mean, it was, the ice bucket challenge, right? Somebody just dumps a bucket of water, ice water
Yeah.
on your. I was so shocked that they would want to dedicate their careers to destroying me instead of, partnering up and saying, hey, let's work together. I'll refer you cases and you refer me cases. But they were and are the exact antithesis of who I am. I feel so strongly about promoting women and supporting women and giving women a chance to succeed and prove themselves, because it's a man's world. And especially, I mean, if you look at our political situation right now, it's so dominated by men. Women don't get a chance. They still, we still don't make anywhere near the money that men do, and we still don't get the opportunities that men do. And we don't, 2% of venture capitalists give money to women right now. 98% of their money goes to men. And it's so frustrating. So I do everything I can. My company is about 98% women right now, and it's always been that way.
Yeah.
But every woman that comes through my doors, I promote from within. So my kennel, I've got two kennel assistants that are now practicing veterinarians that hadn't even thought of going to veterinary school. And I've got probably 10, 15 others that I've put through vet tech school and rehab school. And all of my veterinarians I've put through either acupuncture school or rehab school, and in some cases both, because I think it's really, really important to just promote, and help other women advance the way I did. I don't know if that
You,
answers the question.
there was another CEO that I met in the past week who owns a consulting business. And one thing that I find with leaders too is they really care about the mentorship, professional development of people who are either their alumni or actually, and this is a little bit sad. I say this based off of like thousands of conversations that I've had. I find this to a lesser degree within organizations. And I I hear that when people are looking for opportunities, if they even knew of an organization that offered not only professional development but continued education so they could be successful in their career overall, but even within your business because it helps your business. And there's this sort of paradigm, and maybe you've heard this. I'm concerned that if I develop people, if I invest in people, they're going to leave, and then what about me? How come you don't have that perspective?
I think just the opposite. I think you reap what you sow. So every single person, and yeah, sure, that has happened. Tons of people that I've paid for all their schooling have moved on and done other things, but I don't care. I I love being able to help people and advance in their careers. And my philosophy is the more education I give them and pay for, the better and more well-rounded my team is going to be. I want to be the absolute best in the business, the best in the world. I want all of us to be the absolute most skilled people that we can be in our field. And that's why I offer unlimited CE for every one of my employees as well, because I think people want to learn and people want to keep growing. Nobody wants to be stuck in a position that they've done the exact same thing for 25 years. So the more I can invest in them, the better they're going to be. And for however long they stay, awesome. I've got a really committed, hardworking group of people that I love. When they move on and get married or go somewhere else, whatever, I feel good at night because I did everything in my power to make them better and to help them advance in their lives. And it doesn't have to come back to me. I don't care. I just want to support other women. And if I can do that and help people advance their careers and be happy, I think that's amazing.
I can tell you that when I speak to job seekers, top three things they would love to have, it's even a requirement, is wherever their next company is. And this is profession agnostic. I want someone to invest in me to help me develop at all levels. So even senior leaders or other entrepreneur people or executives, they all have their own version of this. And
Hmm.
sadly, I find that it's rare that there are companies that really are as proactive and invest so much in continued education or even structured mentorship or even just making their time available. And I'm I'm curious, do you think that that comes from, and it can be yes or no, this is just a personal experience. Do you think it comes from, hey, I didn't have these things, so I would love to give back so that others have them now that I'm able to do that? Or is there some other thing that drives you to do that?
Oh, that no, that's exactly it. I didn't get a lot of mentorship and I didn't get a lot of support, and I had to reinvent the wheel for everything I did here. So now that I put myself through all of this and learned so much, I want to give it to everybody else because it's what I feel like what we do is so important, and it breaks my heart when I hear. I just had dinner recently with a friend that works for a competitor, and their whole mindset is money, 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 money. And she said, we are told that we have to make $15,000 every single day. So all day long, we kill ourselves to make that number. And once we made that number, they bumped it up to $16,000 a day. And I was just stunned by that because to me, I want my team to make sure that every animal that comes through the door gets the absolute best experience possible and whatever treatment they need and whatever help they need and whatever support the owner needs if they're going through, a dog with osteosarcoma that's about to lose a leg. It never even occurs to me to tell people, you've got to make some I just don't get it. I don't get that whole mindset. So yes, maybe it probably does come from, nobody helped me create my career. I created it myself and I want to help others. But I'm pretty generous.
There's an interesting parallel in what you share about what the animals or the quality of care, as you often refer to it, experience when you are driving on continuous growth in revenue in perpetuity. So in corporate America, you see that businesses are always trying to optimize by reducing certain costs, and that comes down to people a lot of times or other resources. And while it's important to manage a budget, what ends up happening for the human experience, the experience of the life on the other end of that is, first of all, you can't have 100% growth year over year. It's an unrealistic expectation. But what happens when you do this, not to say you shouldn't try to achieve excellence or improve or grow your business, but doing it in perpetuity just for the sake of money almost and for shareholder interest or benefit has an interesting effect. It burns people out
Yeah.
and it starts to dehumanize them.
Yep.
I can agree. You can always find ways to be more efficient. And as technology disrupts things and it advances them, it does make certain things maybe redundant. But because we're talking about lives, animal, people, I think it starts to dehumanize them or takes away from what makes them a living being. And so in your industry, and I can only speak from my position in supporting industries that you're in, veterinarian, but one thing that I know that practices are concerned about that attracts talent, meaning doctors and support staff, is they will go to practices that prioritize the quality of care
Yeah.
because they know that they're not being attached to a quota daily or monthly, whatever it might be, in a way that reduces the quality of care and essentially just pushes animals in the front door and then back out within 15 minutes to do a workup and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
Where do you see that maybe you do things differently that really support not only the humanity for your staff to care for these animals, but for the betterment of their well-being as going into your practice versus perhaps other facilities?
Well, one of the things that has been so disappointing for me is watching how one by one other rehab facilities are getting purchased by large corporations and they destroy them. They burn these people out, they cut the salaries, they raise the number of hours and days that you have to work. And all of a sudden you have a whole group of people that are so burned out and so desperately unhappy that they quit. And I'm seeing this with every single practice that has been bought by a corporation. And I mean, it really worries me because I worry this is a little bit the future of veterinary medicine. As long as we can keep it small and, maybe owned by, a couple of people owning some rehab facilities. But once they get taken over by these big corporations, I feel like they're destroying our the people that love animals and that come into this work. And what my friend was telling me is that every single veterinarian in her hospital has quit because they're so unhappy. And a lot of them are moving into other fields entirely because
Wow.
they're burned out, and they're taking these kids straight out of school, having them work, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. And within a year or two, they're so burned out, they don't want to practice medicine ever again for the rest of their lives. And I am just the opposite. And maybe it's because I started late in life. I didn't start in this as a youngster, but coming into it later in life, I think you have a different perspective. And for me, this won't ever change. I just want to help animals. And I think we all do. I think everybody that gets into veterinary medicine just wants to help animals. But the more I can invest in and support my team, the better outcome the animals are going to have, and hopefully the happier employees I'm going to have. Because if you have unhappy employees, you're not going to go anywhere. So I think it's just critical that we invest in quality, not quantity, in our field.
You know, there's a parallel with corporate American jobs in terms of the burnout. When I talk to a lot of people who have been through similar experiences, and it's actually happening a lot in the past, I want to say 2 to 3 years, definitely within the last year. And when I speak to them, they say, you know what, I'm not even sure what I want to do next, but I'm thinking about leaving my profession altogether
Mhm.
because they're having this experience. Now, it happens exponentially with doctors, veterinarians specifically. I learned this a couple years ago, which I wasn't aware of, that your profession has a high suicide rate.
Yep.
So we're not even talking just about burnout. We're talking about life and death as a result of it. From your perspective, why do you see it as being not just burnout, but something more severe that causes this? That people would even just leave 3 years into their career out of medical school?
Because these corporations have unrealistic expectations, and none of them are owned by veterinarians. They're owned by business people. And so for them, it's the bottom line. It might as well be a Costco, or a Whole Foods. If you are not owned by a veterinarian or somebody with a veterinary background, it seems to me they're just all about the money. And those of us who get into this field don't get into this field for the money. If I wanted to stay, the money, I would have stayed in television. I made a fortune there. I do this because I want to make a difference in people's lives and in animals' lives. Um, and I think what happens in veterinary medicine is the workloads are getting harder and harder and harder. The days are getting longer. The salary seems to get cut every time the corporations buy these practices. And all of a sudden, you've got people who are just absolutely overloaded with a million animals on their schedule, and they're being told that the owner can't afford, this surgery. It's too expensive, so please just euthanize my dog. And people just can't take it. We're not cut out. We're not in this field to kill animals. We're here to help. And it breaks my heart when I see how many vet techs and how many veterinarians. I heard the statistic that it's 1 in 6 veterinarians right now in the state of California has either considered suicide or is actively considering it. And I don't even know how to begin to broach that subject. How do you protect people from feeling so overwhelmed that they feel like it's just not worth it any longer? But it's a huge problem in our field.
Yeah, for people who aren't in the profession, for them to go through their education is very, very challenging. Not
Yeah.
just because academically it's difficult, they have to learn the biology of numerous species, unlike human doctors.
Yep.
No slight towards them, but unlike human doctors need to learn about the human species, but veterinarians need to learn about several species, usually canine, feline, avian, and reptiles, and there's probably other, there's many different versions of those on top of
Large,
that. So
large animals.
to get into that profession takes a significant amount of dedication and love and passion for taking care of animals. It is absolutely insane to know that there 1 in 7, you said, are
Yep.
considering
Six.
suicide. 1 in 6.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, are getting so burnt out early in their career that they're just leaving it altogether or strongly considering it, which creates the demand for talent significantly. As we both know, and as anybody who owns a veterinarian practice, even if it's a corporation, it is near impossible to create doctors fast enough to care for animals, to find them. If you are one, you know very well that you could throw your resume to the wind, and there would be 1,000 practices who would scoop you up just because you have a pulse and are willing to practice medicine because of the demand, not only on yourself as a human being trying to treat animals, but also just the scarcity of your talent. Do you
Yep.
see any way? I mean, if you were to wave a wand, how might you see a way to better the attraction to the profession and to retain people in the profession so that animals get the care, and facilities like yourself and doctors in general aren't burdened with a high volume of animals?
We need a lot more vet schools. We have so few vet schools in the United States, and I know there's plans now to open, I believe it's up to 7 more veterinary schools in the United States. We cannot graduate these kids fast enough, but we've got to lower the cost of getting into vet school. It's, all my friends graduated with, $250,000 in loans.
Mm-hmm.
And the other issue is allowing foreign veterinarians to work in the United States. I probably get 3 to 4 resumes a month of a vet from Pakistan, a vet from India, a vet from, you name it, Israel, Afghanistan, Brazil, Lebanon, Mexico, and they can't work here for years because the process of getting through all the rules and regulations that you have to jump through to be able to be licensed in the United States is so difficult. Most of them can't even do it. And I think the average is a minimum of 6 to 7 years if you're a foreign veterinarian to get licensed in the United States. So until we loosen up those rules, there are so many people that want to come here and work, but they can't. In fact, I had 2 Russian veterinarians just come here recently and work as technicians just to get, to stay working because they love the field so much. But we've got to, I mean, and this is going to be impossible. I don't know how you stop these venture capitalists and these huge corporations like the NBAs and the BCAs and the Mars and the Banfields from buying up all these practices, because in my humble opinion, they ruin them and they ruin the people that are working there. It's a huge problem for us, and there's no easy solution in sight.
If I were to shift gears to some of the more positive sides of the things that you do and can do with your patients, you shared something very interesting that I never knew. When I went to your facility, you have all these neat little different textured pads and things on the floor among your swimming pools and the walking pools, which are awesome in themselves. They look like something out of like RoboCop. Not to date myself with that reference, but you told me something very interesting about the ability to rehab animals who have severe spinal injuries, or things like when they've been kept in crates because you rescue them from breeding facilities which are not lawful. That animal, and I want your specific way to describe this, but what I recall is that because animals, or dogs specifically, are quadrupedal, they have the ability to recover injuries that humans can't. And you use Christopher Reeves as an example, who went through daily physical therapy but couldn't recover a spinal injury. But with a dog, their genealogy, their physiology, I'm sorry, they can actually recover in sometimes shorter period of time, and that humans could never do. Uh, can you share maybe a more inspiring instance of like a severe case that someone? And I know you have many of these. You could talk
All
days
day,
about these.
every day.
But if you were to pick a favorite one where someone thought their pet was a lost cause that you recovered, that even for you by your standards was the most exciting recovery story, which one would it be?
Oh my God. There are so many, but I'm just going to tell you briefly one because it was insane. So the statistic is 80% of all paralyzed animals will walk again with physical therapy. And in humans, I don't even 10%. I don't even know what the statistic is for humans, but I do remember that Christopher Reeve was getting 8 to 9 hours of PT every day from the day that he broke his neck, and he never walked. But for us, I mean, this was actually one of my very, very first cases. But this man came to me and he had a paralyzed Doberman and he was a hot mess. And his vet had told him to euthanize the dog. And he found us and came for one session, and we just did acupuncture. And he literally carried that dog in. And when we finished the acupuncture session, the dog stood up and started walking, and the guy started bawling. And this was a middle-aged, man, and he was absolutely bawling. And that dog walked. That dog came back for multiple sessions, and he never ended up having to euthanize him. But it was that was so inspirational. But I had another one that came in that had had a stroke. And spinal strokes are actually quite common in dogs. We see them. The youngest one I ever saw was a 2-year-old Pekingese. But it was another dog that came in fully stroked out, paralyzed in just the back legs, incontinent, a mess. And the owners had bought this dog from a breeder, and they're all stressed out. And we put that dog in the pool, and her legs, she was like spaghetti. Her legs were just absolutely didn't work at all. And in one session, by the end of the session, there were 2 or 3 of us in the water working her back legs. And by the time we got out of the pool, she was using her legs like crazy. And that's not uncommon. It's a powerful tool. We had a big Doberman that had broken his neck and he couldn't fit in our underwater treadmills. And so 4 of us jumped into the pool with him, and each one of us took a leg and just did, left, front, back, rear, right, front, left, rear, doing that. And with 4 people working those legs, he recovered in probably 3 weeks. So yeah, the pool is really helpful, especially if you can't use the underwater treadmill.
Is there anything you're most excited about for your industry that has changed or is different from when you initially started the business, as you see as an opportunity to really help continue to heal animals that people otherwise might have to or believe that they have to put down?
Oh my God, absolutely. So there was no animal physical therapy 25 years ago. There was nobody doing anything. There was, nobody to talk to. And now I sit on a lot of boards and I belong to a lot of groups. But now the field of animal physical therapy, not only are there a cajillion of us in California, there's almost no, I mean, certainly no state, but no big city in the United States that doesn't offer physical therapy. And now it's in Australia, it's in England, it's in Germany, it's in France, it's in
Wow.
Italy, you name it. We are opening up worldwide. And I know the CCAT program is now opening up in the Philippines, which is pretty unusual because they don't have any, their animal rehab is just absolutely antiquated. They're opening up in Japan, which is, I mean, it's fascinating. So for me, oh my God. I could spend all day, every day going around the world lecturing about the importance of animal physical therapy because we can give these animals such a better quality of life. And the fact that the whole world, people used to laugh at me when I said I did animal rehab and they'd snicker and say, oh, I didn't know dogs had a drug problem. And, it was hard when people would make fun of you for doing something that you're so passionate about. But now you almost can't find any place on earth where it's not expanding to eventually. So it's just going to continue growing and expanding and getting better. I pray that it's not bought up by the big corporations.
What would you say if you had a legacy impact? What would you like to look back at your career and say, this is what I achieved. This is what I am most proud of.
I am absolutely most proud of how many people I have educated in the field of animal physical therapy, how many people I've put through school, and if you figure how many animals they have then gone on to train and help, we're talking about probably hundreds of thousands of animals who got care and treatment because of what we are doing and the seed that I planted and all those people and the training that I got all those people. They've now gone out into the world, the ones that aren't still here and are helping more animals. So I mean, I just to be able to help as many animals as I can is hugely important to me, and I will do it until the day I die.
You know what? You know what I notice about people who I would describe generally as good leaders is that they don't view themselves as the success. They look at their success from the success of others. And I can tell you really care about fostering that with other people. And even to a greater degree, the fact that you've saved thousands and thousands of animal lives that otherwise would have been discarded um, just because they had an injury that no one had even really attempted to
Yeah.
help or cure or recover from. I'm curious to know. Actually, I want to give you the opportunity to share this. As a recent event, you and I are both in the Los Angeles area, and obviously we experienced those fires. But events like that have an impact on businesses like yours, or you service them in ways that perhaps some people don't necessarily know about, but would have caught on the news, which is there were a lot of displaced, dishomed animals that people don't know where they're at. How have you been helping that event in Los Angeles as it relates to people's animals?
Oh my gosh, we were absolutely overwhelmed. It was a horrific couple of weeks for us. But what we did is we took in every animal that we heard about that had been hit by a car, escaping the fires. So I still have a building full of animals recovering from surgery, from broken legs, broken pelvis, broken back, lots of wounds. We didn't know who they belonged to, and it didn't matter. They needed veterinary care and they needed surgery, and now a lot of them need physical therapy. So we opened up our building for anybody who needed to come in, who needed a place to keep their animals. But we're not that big, so we ended up taking dogs home every night. So my entire staff was, obviously we're open around the clock, but every night my staff were taking home all these animals in case we had to evacuate the building or to make space for other animals coming in. So that's why I absolutely love my team. I love my employees with every fiber of my being because everybody took somebody home. And, we were getting cages and crates and lining them up in my driveway. My vet came and moved into I have a guest house in my backyard. She moved in with her dogs because she had to leave her home. And we were just moving animals left
Yeah.
and right. So I have a foundation as well. So I do a lot of rescuing anyway, but it was beautiful to see how many people came together and who showed up here every single day dropping off donations. Do you need beds? Do you need crates? Do you need food? Do you need medication? I just wanted to cry every day at the cars just pulling up left and right, dropping off stuff. And we got to the point where I ended up having to take stuff to Goodwill. We had so much. But we took a ton of stuff to the shelters. I still have a lot of stuff here. And we're continuing to take in animals that have been injured and trying to find their owners and trying to find homes for the ones that owners haven't shown up. So
It
it's I
really it really redefines taking your work home with you.
Oh my God. And we have all these aggressive Dobermans and paralyzed dogs. And my husband's okay. We'll put Noah in the kitchen. We'll put Bino in the back bedroom. Georgia will go in this crate. I mean, it was just crazy. And I just reached out to a client of ours who's a very well-known actor to see if he wanted to take one of the Dobies that I took in that was hit by a car and has a broken leg. And he just responded and he said, I wish I lost my home in the fires and I've been living in my
Oh,
car. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is such a famous actor and he's living in his car. So of course I turned to my husband and said, can you move into our house in the backyard? And my husband's like, gonna have a lot of people living in that house in our backyard. But yeah, it's been crazy since the fires.
I think a lot of people have really um, put into action in their own life the it takes a village when you see the amount of community support, and I mean from individuals, not just organizations, but individuals who are trying to help other people. You see the images on the news; it's horrifying to look at when you see them in person. But the wonderful part about it is that LA, the people in LA, just regular people coming together and helping them. If someone presently in our area who's been impacted by this wanted to get some help, these resources that you are helping people with one, reconnecting with their pets, or helping others who maybe have a displaced animal that they've come across and they're not really sure where to go, how would they reach out to you? In what way could they get support through your foundation?
Oh, call me. Email the office. We can put my phone number in, our email in. They can just call us, reach out. Happy to help. Anything that people need with support as far as, the whole fire situation, we're here. We're happy to help direct them to, low cost or free veterinary care, whatever they need.
Is it under the same name as Two Hands for
Two Hands,
Paws?
Four Paws, yeah, and we have the Two Hands, Four Paws Foundation where we've taken in about 500 animals to date that we fixed and placed. So yeah,
That's
reach out.
great.
I will always help.
Well, Leslie, I really, really love the work that you guys are doing for our local community. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day and your wonderful staff, the folks that I've met, your husband who does amazing work with designing, different appendages or resources or tools. You guys do next level stuff. So thank you again for the conversation.
You're so welcome. I just, as an aside, yesterday he was making a torso plaster cast for a dog who'd lost her front leg, and he's making a whole prosthetic leg for her front leg. It's going to be super cool. I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, he's awesome.
It's
His
amazing.
title is the Chief Mobility Officer. In corporate America, that means you help people, move up through their career, but he's helping keep animals, the doctors, the people, and animals specifically get back into mobility through these great devices, innovative things that he does that, frankly, another thing that I don't see other places.
No, we're very unique in that. I think that's why people like to work here because we're always doing crazy stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, well, if anybody watching this and they're in the LA area, or they want to reach out to someone like yourself and maybe they're in a different part of the country, they want to learn about how maybe they can do the work that you're doing in some other place, because I know that you're collaborative. That's why you were so excited earlier on in your career to help expand your mission. You can reach out to Leslie Gallagher at Two Hands Four Paws. And thank you again, Leslie, for your time to speak today.
No, thank you for having me. I love talking about this
You're very
anytime.
welcome.
Thanks, David.